really kick off. One is, this is a 60-minute session. This slide deck, this entire presentation is brand new. It's so new that I was literally putting new slides into this presentation pack in the last 5 minutes or so. There was some new information that came available, which I thought was really valuable for this presentation. With that said, it means my timing might be a little bit off. So for those of you who are used to my presentations, I do these types of presentations all the time. Generally, my timekeeping is really, really good. This is unfamiliar territory for me. So in terms of the content and the fact that these slides are so fresh, I may go off tangent a wee bit. So I'll do my best to try and keep it within that 60-minute window. And with that said, I think it is a good time to kick off this presentation. So I'm just going to quickly make sure that I've checked all the Q&As so far. Amazing. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your feedback. It looks like the chat box might be off at this point. So if you do have any questions whilst I do this presentation, feel free to bung them in the Q&A section. I'll do my best to answer them during the presentation. But as I said, there's certainly plenty of time at the end. So I will just close the Q&A box down for myself, get that out of my face, go away, get out of here. Okay. So welcome everybody, a quick intro. So for those of you who haven't come across me before, and I know there's a few of you out there based on the registration. My name is Matt Jones. I am the founding director of Advanced Safety, which is New Zealand's foremost health and safety consultancy. I would say that, but I'm actually pretty proud of what we've achieved over the last few years. We are the first health and safety consultancy in New Zealand to franchise our business model. So we have franchise operators in Christchurch and 2 operators up in Auckland. I am HAZANS registered and have professional NZISM certification. When I founded Advanced Safety in 2016, I also founded the New Zealand Health and Safety Professionals, which now represents 3,250 odd members at last count. We spend most of our time on Facebook and LinkedIn, but have restarted our coffee and tea get-togethers. We ran a couple of conferences back in 2018 and 2019. And for those who've got their ears to the ground, you may have picked up on a bit of a rumor that there may be a conference on the horizon, and you would be right in thinking that. So keep your eyes and ears open, because there's going to be some announcements coming up later in the year in regards to that. If you ever wanted to find Advanced Safety or hear more about our story, we are all over social media. Just simply do a search on @Advanced Safety, and you will soon find us there. I do regular podcasts. I do regular web events, some primarily within the NZHSP community, and other times it's live across all social media platforms. I guess I'm what could be considered an early adopter to change in particular. And I guess that's possibly why it's led me to doing this presentation on AI, and in particular ChatGPT. It blew my mind the moment I played around with it, and it's got me asking some pretty deep questions, which I felt were very worthwhile sharing some of those answers that I've discovered with you all today. So that's my intro. What I wanted to do before I really kick into the full guts of this presentation is to understand what's brought you here today. Sometimes when we sign up to presentations and webinars, it could be days, if not weeks, before the live presentation. Sometimes it's good to remind ourselves why we're here today. So what are some of the things that have brought you here today? I invite you now to jump onto the Q&A box and to write your answers. What is that key thing that drove you here today? Or what is that main thing that you would love to know more about that I can spend a little bit of time on during this presentation, which will provide you with the most value and the biggest impact that I can in this short space of time that we have together. So I can see you guys are flat out putting in your things already, which is awesome. Claire, work smarter, not harder. Yep. I think possibly that's what drove me to checking out ChatGPT in the first place. I was hearing rumors that it sped up your processing and your thinking, and that was one of the things that got me there. Understanding if I will become redundant as an OHS professional, a really important question. Hopefully I will be able to provide some light or shine some light on that and give you some ideas and thoughts about how to future-proof your role and your position in the health and safety space. Recently played with ChatGPT, can see its benefits, but wonder how many people will use this in place of actual advice from real people. Again, a really important question. And I've got some cautionary tales to tell during this presentation, which will hopefully shine some light on that. Staying up to date with what's happening. Yes, absolutely. I think that's incredibly important in our space. Others' thoughts and challenges on health and safety developments with AI. Yep. Passionate about health and safety. Awesome. You're definitely in the right place. Interested in the topic and need to understand more. Brilliant. To know more about the possibilities of using ChatGPT in health and safety, learn something new. I'm skeptical about the technology, so looking to understand what AI means for me. All right, you guys, this is awesome. I would like to know more about how to use ChatGPT and write procedures as a basis and a potential for health and safety space. Later in this presentation, I've got some promises and bits and pieces that I'll speak to in the next slide. Have started using ChatGPT in the business. Useful link and see what's going on, how AI can help or hinder us in health and safety. All right, wicked. This is really helpful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, guys. To understand benefits and risk implications specifically to the safety profession. Nice, love it. How I can become a leader in this space. Again, awesome. That's exactly the way you should be approaching this. Interested in how companies in New Zealand are starting to use AI in the health and safety space. Wicked. Cool. Thank you so much, team. This means that I am on the money. Curiosity mainly, but interested to see how it could be used in the job safety analysis space. Cool. Like it. Wicked. If I haven't seen your answer, apologies. I will try and come back to some of these later in the presentation. Okay, thanks everybody. In the light of time and making sure you guys get the most out of this, basically what this has done is it's given me confidence that the slides are absolutely on par with what you're looking for during this presentation. I'll also keep those in mind when I'm speaking so that I can keep bringing it back to some of those key points. Amazing. This is great. Thanks, everybody. Let's kick into it. So just in case there was no response to this was just some of the things that I was thinking of. So it looks like we're on the same page, particularly around what AI is, understanding its impact. And as some of you have alluded to, is making sure that we're at the forefront of this change so that we can ride it, so that we can actually make the very best of the situation in which we find ourselves in. So what can we expect from this presentation? It's going to be fast. You're probably already picking up on the fact that it's going to be fast paced. There is going to be a lot of information. So yes, this is being recorded. It will be made available to you at the an hour or two after this presentation. And near the end of this presentation, I'll also be providing links to tons of free value-loaded content. For those of you who know me and have been to some of my presentations in the past, you'll know that this is one of the big things that I do, is I try and deliver as much value as I possibly can with no expectation of return. Ultimately, what I'm doing is helping you guys steer you towards how to best manage the change that has now made itself apparent. So a quick disclaimer, I am not an AI professional, very few and far between. What this presentation is based on is everything that I've been able to gather over the last few months, probably the last 3 or 4 months really, when I became aware of ChatGPT and went deep into what this was all about, and have been monitoring the changes as they have happened over the last few months, even in the last few days. So I'm certainly not pretending to be an expert in the AI space. What I'm bringing to this is the health and safety lens and focus on the discussion, I guess. So this is the topics, the contents in which we are going to be speaking to over this session. Lots to cover. We're 11 minutes in already, so I better kick off. Okay. So a quick check before I get into this. Everyone happy with the pace, sound, visuals? All good? Just give me a thumbs up or a yes in the comments, and then I'll kick into it. Yep. Awesome. Good. Yep. All right, bro. Thanks. All right. Won't mess around with that for too much longer. Thanks, team. Okay, let's do this. So the background. The evolution of technology and the emergence of AI. So let's just look into a bit of the history and scope to this conversation. AI. So a quick definition of what AI is. It's a field of computer science which is dedicated to creating systems capable of performing tasks that usually require human intelligence. Examples of this may be image recognition, speech recognition, decision-making, and language translation. So AI has actually been part of our everyday lives for quite some time. And I did a bit of a search for some examples. I'll give you a bit of a hint, actually. In this particular slide, I asked ChatGPT some examples of everyday AI, and this is what it came up with. So we've got smart assistants. Things like Alexa, Google Home, and Siri are examples of everyday AI in our lives. Recommendation systems, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, they all recommend what series we might like to watch next. They often prompt us to finding that next series that we're going to fall in love with and probably binge watch and stay up too late watching. Email filters. Gmail, for example, uses AI to filter out spam. It also helps us to what's it called? Categorize our emails. Autocorrect and predictive text. So when you're doing your text messaging on your phone and it comes up with really random words sometimes, that is also part of the AI experience that we've been getting used to over the last few years. Navigation and traffic predictions. So with Google Maps, for example, the quickest routes, it also tells us where we can expect traffic jams. And social media, face recognition in photos and curating content. Just recently, I was tasked to try and figure out all of our photos, all of our family photos. Between myself and my wife, we've got thousands of photos on our phones. Put those all into cloud storage, use Google to help make sense of all those photos. And it just blew my mind how quickly it managed to categorize and remove all the double ups. And we've now got a really epic library of photos. And that was all thanks to AI. So a little bit of a history as to how we actually got here and some of the key milestones that led us to the AI world in which we find ourselves. So back in the early 2000s, we had this thing called machine learning. This was data analysis and prediction phase. I remember several years ago talking to a business that had created this analysis machine. Basically using big data, it was able to predict incidents and injury based on the time of the year and the seasons, based on locations. It was basically heat mapping large organizations and enabling the health and safety management team to make better informed decisions. Then in the 2010s, we had this thing called deep learning. This was where we started to see the vision and speech phase. Examples of that were self-driving cars is a really great example, where we had machinery or tech being able to identify hazards, moving objects, allowing vehicles to make informed decisions about whether it was safe to proceed or whether it needed to take decisive action. And then in very recent years, we've got generative AI. This is where we've moved into this thing called language mastery phase. Now, I'm going to unpack what that actually means in a little bit more detail in a moment. But you can see how things have rapidly changed. When we think back to other revolutionary periods, I often think back to when we moved from the farming agricultural society into moving into the factories during the Industrial Revolution. That took decades, if not centuries, to achieve. Here we're just talking about a matter of years, ultimately within one generation, which is a significant shift unseen before. So let's just have a look at what Mr. Bill Gates has to say about this. In my lifetime, I've seen two demonstrations of technology that struck me as revolutionary. The first of which was 1980, the graphic user interface. Now, I'm old enough to remember the very early computers that came on the market. My mum was involved in administration during this period. And I remember her bringing home some of the very earliest versions of the PC, these big boxes with black screens and MS-DOS writing in green, and its functionality was extremely limited. But at that time, in those early days, the likes of Bill Gates and others, when they first were exposed to this, they knew that this was going to just completely change the way in which we did work and the way in which we performed our day-to-day lives. The second revolutionary thing that Bill Gates has seen is as early as 2022, when he saw OpenAI and its full functionality for the first time. What Bill Gates did with the team at OpenAI, now OpenAI, sorry, are the founders of ChatGPT. Bill Gates challenged the team at OpenAI to train an artificial intelligence to pass an advanced placement biology exam. Now, he did this in early 2022. And the reason why he chose the advanced placement biology exam was because it wasn't black and white type thinking. It wasn't simply mathematical equations. There was a large degree of interpretation and a high level of language proficiency required in order to pass that exam. Now, when he set that test to the team at OpenAI, he was expecting them to take a year or maybe 2 years for them to come up with the answer to his challenge. They came back to him in 12 weeks and they smashed it out of the park, passing the exam with full bells and whistles. So what is this language mastery phase? The final step that I mentioned in that evolutionary program. Well, since language permeates everything that an organization does day to day, such as institutional knowledge, those Yodas ultimately that live within most businesses that have been there for years, who have developed an understanding and a skill set that only the Yodas could acquire, right? Where if businesses are smart enough and have change management practices in place, capture that knowledge and long before, ideally, those Yodas either retire or move on to their next employment. Communication, day-to-day communication, without it, a business would not survive. The processes, the policies, and the procedures that we in health and safety spend so much time creating, drafting, tweaking, reviewing, getting feedback, getting frustrated, and getting it over the line. And so as a result, it's going to have far-reaching consequences across businesses, but also society as well. Okay, so that's the background, right? It's sounding pretty immense, pretty heavy stuff. But ultimately, the scope of this presentation, my background, long time ago, I did a joint honours degree in philosophy and politics. So I could take us down the road of deep philosophy and political thinking in this presentation. But what I'm doing instead is for the intended audience, the health and safety practitioners and business leaders among you, I'm keeping it at a level where I want to show and demonstrate the application of this tool and to promote how we can ride that wave and get the very most out of it in our the organizations that we work for, and also potentially for the consultancies and the businesses that we work within as well. So with that in mind, let's just delve into who ChatGPT are and their story. So ChatGPT. GPT stands for the Generative Pre-trained Transformer. The chat is the conversational AI. So ultimately, ChatGPT is the interface between the super smart bit of kit that comes out with some amazing responses and answers to the prompts in which we give it. So I'm going to show some examples of that in a moment. But its story and its history. So GPT-1 was released just in mid-2018. At this stage, it had already developed quite a solid following, and I'll speak to some of the numbers behind its followings in a moment. But it very rapidly established a momentum of fundamentally kind of snowballing, and there was it's turning into a bit of a tsunami in terms of the change in which ChatGPT is bringing to us all. So by May 28th, 2020, we were into version 3. Now, if you think back to Bill Gates' challenge with ChatGPT, between November 2022, 3 months, well, 3 or 4 months prior to that. So in mid 2022 is when Bill Gates was invited to see this tool for himself after he had put the challenge down, expecting them to take a year or two to come up with the solution to his challenge, which was to pass that exam. They passed that exam, smashed it out of the park, and very soon thereafter released ChatGPT 3.5. And then just as recently as March this year, ChatGPT 4 hit the market, and has just caused a storm of conversation and debate, not only in news, but within government buildings, industry, and even in a little section of the health and safety space as well. So that's why I want to try and now delve into is the conversations in which this is generated, and what this could mean within our professions. So just to give you a bit of context as to the exponential growth of ChatGPT. So when it was first launched, so we go back to mid 2018, within its first week of launch, it gained 1 million users. Now, this little image here is a person staring at a stack of $100 bills, which equates to 1 million. Within 8 weeks, just 2 months, they reached 100 million active users. You're starting to get a sense of the growth, right? Now it's got an estimated 1 billion monthly website visitors to ChatGPT. This is groundbreaking in terms of website visitor, in terms of active users. There's the fastest growth in history. It has just smashed all other records of any website, any online tool out of the park, and just gives us some sense of how monumental and momentous this moment in time is. It's just unheard of. So let me just delve into what ChatGPT looks like in case you haven't had an opportunity to look at it. You can access ChatGPT version 3.5 for free. It just requires a username and password. And if you wanted ChatGPT 4, it's a small monthly fee, which gives you access to a far vaster array of likely responses, answers, a deeper, longer response and conversation rate as compared to 3.5. I've been testing and using ChatGPT now for the best part of 3 months, and I've learned a lot, and I've also gleaned a lot, and I have to admit it has saved me a ton of time when it comes to producing things like social media posts, social media content, presentations. What ChatGPT does very, very well is it provides you with the framework or a first draft of a journal, a post, simple things like emails, all the way through to potentially policies and process type documents. But what it's not very good at is, or what it's not capable of doing currently, is producing visual content, images, within ChatGPT itself. However, there are numerous, and the number just increases by the day, products and tools that are becoming available online, which do make use of AI and enable the users to create beautiful PowerPoint presentations, video content, enables you to create artificial voiceovers, so you can basically create your video recording content using the tools such as ChatGPT to create the script for your video. You could then take that script and place it into a third-party tool which uses AI to use that script to create a a computerized voiceover. You can then put all of that into another third party, which would then create the visuals, the video footage, and the text underneath, and you would basically have an entirely curated video within a matter of a couple of hours worth of effort, if that, based on using this tool now. It's nuts. So I'm going to show you some of the top tip prompts in the next slide, which will help you to get the most out of your ChatGPT experience. So my top tips are to learn how to prompt. So prompting is key, and I'll show you that in a moment. Another top tip is to question the outputs, because the consequences, if you don't, can be massive. And there's a couple of examples coming up in a few slides later, where you can see clearly what can go wrong when you forget to question what ChatGPT has provided as an answer to your question. A quick example from my own experience was that I was putting together a draft blog post for my website, and I was looking for some interesting statistics around ISO 45001, the Health and Safety Management System, and its implementation here in New Zealand. So I asked ChatGPT the question, please provide me with some interesting facts around the usage of ISO 45001 in New Zealand. And it came out with some really interesting facts. The statistics were surprising, to say the least. It told me that over 80% of New Zealand businesses had considered implementing ISO 45001. It also told me that some 1 in 3 businesses had successfully been certified to ISO 45001 standards. And I started to put this into the blog post thinking, wow, this is really great stats. This is really interesting content. And then I thought, hold on a minute, those numbers do not make sense to me. ISO 45001 is still taking quite some time to be embedded or even understood here in New Zealand. So I asked ChatGPT, can you please tell me where you got your stats from? And at this point in time, the penny dropped. ChatGPT suddenly went into full apology mode, telling me, I am so sorry. I am just a AI automated tool. You asked me to provide some interesting facts. And so I produced some interesting facts. I was like, oh my gosh, if I hadn't checked that, there was the danger of me publishing a blog post with some very interesting stats, which actually had no factual foundations to them whatsoever. And it just made me realize how easily you could get caught out without meaning to, with all the right intentions of putting something that ChatGPT has produced in response to one of your questions into something that could make its way into a board report, or it could make its way into a policy statement, or it could make its way into a toolbox thought, for example, and get yourself into a whole heap of strife. So it is extremely important to always question the outputs and to keep in mind its limitations. However, I must say that it's so important to have fun with this tool, because it just continues to blow my mind around how useful it has been and how much time it has saved me in a lot of the work that I do. For those eagle-eyed among you, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, just yesterday, it was a few days ago now, there's a chat conversation with the title Succinct Executive Report. I used this to help me to chunk up one of my board reports that I provided to one of my clients. I had the content, I had the data, but I had to fit the presentation into this small little box. It was the only space I had available on the presentation. And I was trying desperately hard to chunk it down, still making sure that the critical information was there, but was presented in a way in which visually it still was appealing to the reader, but provided them with the critical information that they needed to have. After 3 or 4 attempts, I managed to get it to a point where I was happy, and the final report was received very warmly by the intended audience as well. I mean, that just saved me so much time, because it would have otherwise taken me ages to try and figure out a similar solution. So as promised, I mentioned that I would show you some prompt examples. So here's some good practice examples for you. So when it comes to prompting, when it comes to engaging with ChatGPT, you need to get into the habit of using these types of frameworks. So whenever you start a conversation with ChatGPT, think about what role it has to provide. So often when I'm asking it to do a social media post, for example, I tell ChatGPT that it is a market media specialist with expertise in health and safety consulting. You have been asked by Advanced Safety to create a social media post on, this is where the task then moves into it, on LinkedIn. Now, the format might be, I require a post that is succinct, punchy, brief, which includes 4 or 5 bullet points on this subject matter. At the end of this post, I would like there to be a call to action. The call to action is to visit my website. That's a really good example of the role task format approach when using ChatGPT. Now you can put that prompt in one big sentence, or you could break the prompt down into various chunky sections. So each time it provides a response, you then give it further information so that you are then getting a far more coherent, closer to what you're actually looking for result. It's the same with the context task format approach. These are just some frameworks. There's tons of different frameworks out there. If you're a copywriter guru, I'm sure you'll be able to list off dozens of them. Using modes, this is another really good example, right? So you could say to it, come up with some new ideas for this concept. You might have a new product, you might have a new policy that you have to write, you might have a new toolbox coming up and you're not really sure what it is you're going to talk about. Give it some prompts, give it some ideas to work with, or be a thought partner. What should I consider when presenting a toolbox talk to construction workers based in New Zealand? And it will give you a raft of ideas, and then you can jump on one of those ideas and then refine it. Keep asking it questions until you get something that's close to what you're looking for. Types of users. So you can summarize, brainstorm, synthesize. If you're a coder or a budding coder, you can ask it to do coding, which is nuts. Reformat this post. So you could be looking at, maybe you've written a policy statement, or you're working on a standard operating procedure, or as someone mentioned earlier on, a job safety assessment or analysis. And you're looking to refresh it or refine it or make it more reader friendly. You can reformat it. You may have members of the team who are from overseas. You can ask ChatGPT to reformat it into another language, breaking down those barriers and making learning that much easier for the audience. Set the tone, write using conversational tone. If it's a LinkedIn post, for example, it may be required to be a little bit more formal. If you're doing a social media post for Facebook or for Instagram, you can maybe add a little bit of humor in there, because that is relevant to the audience or the intended audience. Again, thinking about in your place of work, if you're trying to do a presentation to the board of directors, would it make sense to have humor and conversational style tone in the presentation? Probably not. You probably want it to be a bit more formal, maybe a bit persuasive, maybe provide a little bit of data to the prompt and enabling ChatGPT to come out with something that's a little bit more suitable to the intended audience. So for marketers and for copywriters out there, right now, they've probably been feeling a little bit nervous about this new change. However, you can see that it still takes a little bit of experience and a little bit of thought about the way in which you are putting your questions and conversations through to ChatGPT in order to get the right kind of outcome from your efforts. And also reformatting. So I do this all the time. So I'll get a few responses back from ChatGPT. I'm fairly happy with what it's come up with. And then I might ask it to put it into a table format and then go further and say, okay, give me your top 5 best examples of the response you just gave me in table format. So then it allows me to then digest that information better. It allows me to swap and change and have a bit of a play around with it. Add bullet points. Can you be a little bit more specific? Can you add more detail to that particular point? There's so many different ways in which you can really get the very most out of ChatGPT. Okay, so hopefully that has been quite useful for you. I wanted to give you as much ammunition, as much resource as I could during this presentation. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is being recorded, so you don't need to go too crazy with your notes. You will be able to get access to this after the presentation. Okay, now we're going to delve into applications of this information. I'm just mindful of time, so I'm going to rattle through these. So this was pretty nuts when I stumbled across this one. So this is Spot. Now, Spot was created by Boston Dynamics and has been used by Turner Construction based in the US for several months now. What Spot does blows my mind. So Spot goes out and does 360-degree virtual walkthroughs of construction sites on a daily basis. These guys reckon that it's saving them a ton of man hours per month. Basically, what Spot is doing is providing the Turner construction team 15-minute summaries of what is going on their construction sites, something that would take 4 to 5 hours for a consultant or an in-house health and safety or a quality or a environmental supervisor to produce. Spot walks around the construction sites, taking video, taking audio, taking measurements such as vibration and all sorts of other amazing different data types, and producing really comprehensive reports. It's enabling Turners to see the progress of the construction sites. Spot can go to the very same point that it was there the day before, the week before, the month before, taking all of these assessments and producing progress reports that were otherwise unattainable. Yeah. I would actually love to hear your comments on this. So if you've got any thoughts about Spot, feel free to chuck that in the Q&A box, and I'll do my best to read those out really quickly. But when I saw and thought about this, like from a health and safety consultant point of view, I was just like, oh, okay. That is about a third of my income. What's your thoughts, team? Any ideas, thoughts, reactions to Spot in the Q&A? I'll come back to that in a second. Yeah, trip hazard. Yeah, potentially. If you've seen any other footage of these types of robots, you may start to get a sense that basically these things are bomb-proof and probably have a radius around them. So if anything gets too close to them, it will move out of the way automatically. You want one? Yeah. Hopefully it's non-shedding. Okay. Yes. Very good. Surely the cost to develop this tech will be very much make it very expensive to hire. Yeah, look, it's a really good point. I'm sorry, I'll have to close down the Q&A for now, just in time of time. But yeah, you're absolutely right. In terms of cost, this will certainly be cost prohibitive to most. What we need to remember is electric cars were cost prohibitive, what, less than a decade ago, if that. The way technology is evolving, the way in which battery power and battery technology is evolving, the way in which robotics and AI are evolving, we need to keep ourselves very well aware of this technology because it is here, it's arrived. In the UK, smart motorways. So they have been trialing this, they've put a pause on it due to safety concerns. But computers have, in recent times, been able to determine the flow of traffic on some of the most busiest highways in the world. The safety concerns were around the hard shoulder when vehicles break down. The hard shoulder is used. There have been some serious accidents in the past, and there are genuine concerns around people's safety in using this technology. So it's going under a very thorough review. But I suspect it's just time until that actually becomes normal. And the other thing is that I wanted to talk to quickly was Spark Cognition. So what Spark Cognition, well, part of their solution suite is that they are able to tap into existing hardware and software such as CCTV. And using AI, it is able to identify desirable and non-desirable workplace behaviors. So in this case study, there was a manufacturing client that was concerned around non-compliance issues around the use of PPE, lifting protocols, and general worker attentiveness. within a very short space of time, those behaviors were largely resolved. Now, according to the case study, also worker engagement and participation went through the roof as well. I kind of wonder about that, because I can't imagine there being too many happy workforces out there knowing that CCTV cameras are there watching your every movement. One of the things that I saw even this morning to help resolve or move past that concern is there are some tools out there now that remove the individual. You can see the images of the individuals here on the screen. They remove those and replace them with avatars, like blobby characters. So you can see that that's what that person was doing, but you can't identify the individual unless you have the right security access. If you are a member of the board or a senior manager or senior leader, you may just see the kind of blobby character. If you have the right level of access, you would see exactly who that person was. That may resolve some of that engagement concerns that I've got in that. But again, it's using the means of that big data, that technology and software that had been developed 10, 20 years ago, and then splicing that with AI, which is now just really come into its fore now. And you can see how that is making a dramatic impact in the types of outcomes that these forward-thinking big businesses with big budgets are able to achieve. But as I said before, those budgets at the moment need to be big to adapt to this, but it's only a matter of time where this is just going to go through from small all the way through to the really big players. Okay, so potential applications. All right, just mindful of time. Okay, rattle through this one. So AI applications in everyday health and safety. Some of my thoughts on this. I feel that it's going to be leading to improved risk assessments. So we'll be able to process that big data and identify those trends that otherwise we may have overlooked. So I know from personal experience, and I'm sure it's very much the same for you guys too, where many of us are still struggling and stumbling through spreadsheets, Excel databases. If you're really unlucky, you may have several spreadsheets that you have to review on a monthly to try and produce those monthly board reports, which probably take days, if not sometimes weeks, to create. Super stressful. You may have moved on to some software solution providers, but still, it's hard to be able to delve through that data with any sense of true confidence. AI will be able to really penetrate deeply into that data. Enhanced training programs. As I mentioned before, right now, ChatGPT can change things into different languages. Imagine being able to do that for different learner types as well. If we're aware of those who have difficulty with large technical jargon, and break that down and chunk it up into simple bite-sized chunks, perhaps making the training suitable for primary school level or high school level, whatever the audience might be. Streamlining tasks, automating those administrative tasks. Right now, ChatGPT has this thing called, it's basically it's OpenAI now, which means that we can assign simple tasks directly within ChatGPT. I can book plane tickets, for example, or I can book a Uber using ChatGPT. I know, nuts, right? 24/7 assistance. So it's just like having your own virtual assistant on demand. That language translation that I was mentioning before as well, and that increased accessibility and promoting a safety culture. It all comes back to thinking hard about who your intended audience are. So if it's the board of directors or if it's the workers on the ground, thinking hard about what to what degree, what education level, what language, making sure that that goes into the prompts, you're going to get a far better result. And AI, as things evolve, is just going to get smarter and smarter in dealing with this. So the potential challenges are risks with AI. Ethical and privacy concerns. Now I'm going to show some examples of each of these in a moment. Dependability and reliability of artificial systems. Regulatory and legal implications. Job displacement and changes in work patterns. I noticed some of these coming up in the Q&A at the very beginning here. Risk and over-reliance on AI. And so here's some examples of where it can potentially go a little bit awry. So foodstuffs used facial recognition technology. This is as early as 2020, and it only came to light at the end of 2022. They were using facial recognition through their CCTV cameras to identify past and present shoplifters. And when that became public, there was an outcry around the privacy and ethical implications of that use of technology. We've also seen AI being quite discriminatory. We've actually seen examples of where it seems to have a racist and sexist tendency. The reasons for that potentially is because those who are putting the information in potentially have those discriminations without even realizing it. And so as a result, the input that it receives, it's inevitably going to output. And so it's putting questions around how accurately should we receive or take the information that's being produced by artificial intelligence. It's also asking a question around how do we stop that from happening in the first place? Here in New Zealand, as recently as the 6th of June, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment has blocked its staff from using AI within the buildings and within work time due to security concerns. Now, there's lots of work going on in the spaces of Microsoft and within Google and in other environments where they are working extremely hard to ensure that the information within businesses and within government departments is maintained within those businesses and government departments based on their licensing and their use of their products. I'm going to mention some people to follow near the end of this presentation to help with that conversation. I suspect right now the concern is, and we've seen evidence of it, is that the information that we're putting into ChatGPT right now may not necessarily be as controlled as you may think. It's extremely important not to put business specific or sensitive information or questions into your chat, because ChatGPT is absorbing all of this information and could potentially start regurgitating it out across the public sphere. And you could find your private information being shared as public knowledge in a response somewhere around the world. Here's another example of how important it is to question and check the information that ChatGPT gives back out to you. This is true. This is a true story. So a lawyer used ChatGPT in a federal court. He asked ChatGPT to provide him with examples of case law to help him win his case. It came up with 6 examples of case law, which the lawyer then used as reference and to try and argue his point with the courts. The opposition queried his data and said, "Can you please provide us with the sources of your information?" And when he went to check, he couldn't find it because ChatGPT had made it up. It was basically doing its best to respond to the query, and he didn't do his due diligence and is now in extremely hot water. We're still waiting to see what's going to come of that. We had mentions of this at the beginning of the presentation. Is AI coming for a job near you? Look, I don't have a crystal ball, and all honesty, based on everything I know, which is very little in comparison to the amount of information out there now, I don't know. What I do know is right now, AI is still relatively limited in what it can achieve. So I know I mentioned earlier on that it can do these amazing presentations and it can produce this and that. If you go off and have a look at all the variations of AI driven tools and solutions that are available online now, it's incredible. However, the more I play with them, the more limited I've realized that they are. It really does come back to how well you draft your questions and your chats with GPT. It is still fairly limited. I'm going to mention a couple of things that I want you to go and check out after this presentation in a moment. But one thing that I will mention, well, I'll mention it now, is Microsoft's Copilot. Now, I'll refer to this in a moment, but that when I saw the promo to that changed my thoughts about AI, because I was like, oh, like new tech, it's still got years to go, surely. wait until you see what Microsoft and Copilot are coming up with, and it's going to be released in a matter of months. It's got me thinking, and I'll explain what I'm thinking in a moment. Okay, so how have government, industry, civil society, and academia responded? So these are some of the new slides I just threw in today. Governments, there's been a bit of a mishmash of responses so far because it's so new, and we know that governments aren't the fastest at responding to this kind of stuff. So we've got things like executive orders and development plans. Europe has been fairly quick off the starting line. In places like Italy, for example, they've managed to pass some legislation to try and curb some of the potential negative effects of AI. There are some long-term strategies being drafted and white papers and guidelines being produced all around the place. Industry blueprints, OpenAI, the founder, Sam Altman, has attempted to produce a blueprint to help with these conversations. So has Microsoft and Google. They're all over it, trying to figure out the best way to respond and approach to this. You may also have seen the likes of Elon Musk and the CEO of Apple and numerous others have come out saying that we need to put a stop on AI for at least 6 months to just get our heads around all of this. Although I kind of understand where they're coming from, on the other hand, I'm like, well, you guys have been at the cutting edge of this for so long. What are you banging on about? Like, surely that's a bit of a market advantage to you. The fact is, it's significant change. And like, even the fact that me as a health and safety professional talking to an audience about AI, I wouldn't have been dreaming of doing this a few months ago, but it's caught us all. It's caught us all out because it's going to impact and affect everything. We have to prepare ourselves for it. I'm just going back on myself. Right. So one positive thing that came, well, the very few positive things that came from the Christchurch terrorist attack in the 15th of March 2019 was this is a really good example of when government, industry, civil society, academia all came together. So for 17 minutes, the actions that happened on that day were live streamed, uncontrolled, no one could stop it. Images were found across the globe within a matter of seconds. Facebook alone removed 1.5 million copies of the video within the first 24 hours of the event. And YouTube measured at one point 1 upload of the video per second. It led to some very deep soul searching, and to New Zealand's credit, we responded. We pulled together government, industry, civil society to a table to discuss exactly what we could and couldn't do to stop this from happening again. It enabled us to agree a set of actions. It became known as the Christchurch Call to Action, which was launched within 8 weeks of that event. Today has over 120 members made up of government, industry, academics, and civil society groups, and has established crisis response protocols. It has enabled funding and more man-woman power into international organizations that can shut down events like what happened in Christchurch within a matter of minutes. A really good example is in more recent times was the Buffalo attack in the US in 2022, where the live stream was removed within less than 2 minutes, bringing a complete shutdown of any footage or video that could come from that event. That's just a small taster of what is possible when the powers that be come together and recognize how important this situation is. I think we're very much at that point now, and I think we're starting to see signs and indication that that is about to start happening. So preparing for the future. From a health and safety practitioner's point of view, as a business leader's point of view here in New Zealand, final few slides. I'm aware of time, so I'm pushing to make sure I've got a bit of a Q&A time for you all near the end. Here's some thoughts for you to take away. Businesses, business leaders, health and safety advisors, managers, consultants, wherever you happen to be, should dive into this and identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that AI bring to you, your business, your clients, your directors, and also your workforce, and take action. This isn't me just putting a bullet point on a slide. I've done this personally. I've done this with my managing director, my franchisee success manager. We've sat down and worked our way through the SWOTs of what AI means for advanced safety. The response to AI should remain people, user focused. I've been kind of trying to press home that point around using ChatGPT and thinking hard about the intended audience. It is key to getting the most out of the tool. Take your team on the AI implementation journey. So whether it's the board, whether it's your customers, clients, whether it's your team, introduce them to AI, show them the functionality, show them how much time and energy it can save, show them the fun side of AI, because I promise you it's really fun. It can be quite entertaining. Evaluate the routine tasks of every role and identify automation opportunities. Double down on workshop facilitation, presentation, and communication skill investment. This is absolutely key. I've been banging the drum on this one for my team in-house. I believe as health and safety practitioners, no matter where you happen to be, whether you're in-house, an advisor, a coordinator, manager, director, whether you're a consultant, whether you are an emerging health and safety leader, or whether you have been, there fighting the fight for years. Now, if ever there was a time to invest in public speaking presentations, this is it, because everything else potentially could be automated. It is the human factor that AI can never replace. And this is why I am so adamant about how important it is to become very proficient at speaking and communicating difficult subject matters and chunking them down into easy, digestible information points for the intended audience. It is absolutely essential. And you will see me banging on about this for weeks, months, and probably years to come. Okay, so riding the wave. Hopefully I've inspired you. Hopefully I've given you a bit of a sense that, yeah, AI, there's still a lot of unknowns about it. And, we're here, we're alive, we're going to watch this revolution unravel in front of us. People to follow, resources to follow, following the story, keeping one foot in front of this wave is going to be really critical to ensure that we get the messages to the people that need to hear them the most. And so here's some people that I really recommend you consider checking out. First and foremost, today, if you've got time, is to check out the Microsoft 365 Copilot AI event. So this was aired a couple of months ago. This is what rung my bell. When I watched the full version of this event, I was left quite shaken by what I'd seen. This fundamentally changes everything I think about what work is. Microsoft are going to throw Copilot through its entire suite of Microsoft Office. So from Excel to Teams to Words to PowerPoint, it's going to have AI running through it. It's going to manage your meetings. It's going to take minutes. It's going to identify the action owners. It's going to do automated follow-ups to ensure that those actions are taken. It's like, what? I've got clients in the project management space, and I'm looking at them going, oh man, this could be a bit of a groundbreaker. Use AI to get ahead while others panic is another great video. Tom Bilyeu, if you're not following Tom Bilyeu anyway, you really should be. He's from Impact Theory, founder of Impact Theory, amazing guy to be following. If you are all about business leaders, if you are all about self-improvement, if you're all about deep thinking, great person to follow. Hilary Walton, our own homegrown superstar. Hilary's based here in New Zealand. For those who are part of NZHSP, you will be familiar with her. Previously CISO of Cordia, she's now part of the Microsoft team here in New Zealand, just back from her time in the States with Microsoft HQ. If there was anyone in New Zealand who was up to speed with what AI is all about, it is her, and she runs an amazing podcast series called Digital Culture Ideas. Find her on YouTube. You will find her on all social media platforms. If you're not following her yet, you really ought to be. So jump on that quickly. Also mindful of time, on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, where are you? Get on LinkedIn. Follow these people. Ruben Hassad is showing some really remarkable uses for AI. Martin Harbech, he is one of the directors at what was Facebook, now Meta, showing all of the evolutions of AI and tech. And then Cameron Stevens in Aussie, safety tech guru. Now, if you want to keep up to speed with the likes of Spot, that robot and things like that, Cameron is all about that. Cameron is also going to be a keynote at the forthcoming Safeguard conference. He might be in New Zealand already. If you're not following him, again, you're missing out. He's producing some fantastic content. And then last but not least is me. If you want to continue the discussion, here's 4 really simple ways to do so with one simple link. All of these cost nothing. So you just simply make a note of the website, linktree/advanced safety. That gives you access to all of these 4 things. Basically, our monthly newsletter is oozing with value, getting loads of really positive feedback on that. There's the NZHSP Facebook group. There's the Advanced Safety YouTube channel. We are going live with our podcasts, are coming back with some serious content. I mean, gosh, like, I can't wait to release it to you. It's all being recorded as we speak. And you can also book yourself a 15-minute call with me. Then the last wee bit, if you have any time and you have any pressing questions, now is the time to do it, team. So if you have a spare couple of minutes, I'm happy to stick around for a couple of extra minutes. Anyone got any questions, any thoughts, any aha moments? Or if you've got a dash, let me know how this presentation was. Was this okay for you? Was it useful? Did you get any useful insights? Let me know. Cool, you are welcome. Thank you. Any burning questions out there, folks? You're very welcome, Aaron. Thank you. Cool. Thank you, Wade. I appreciate that. Look, I agree, right? We will always need that human touch. And for me, it's a thank goodness. And that's why I was kind of pressing on the public presentation, workshopping, speaking skills, because that's just critical, right? So what was once described as the soft skills, the critical thinking, the emotional IQ, what once was soft, I actually think will be essential. And I think that is what we must double down on now. You're welcome, Lee. Thank you. Cool. Thank you. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Rian. You're welcome, Dion. Thank you. Yeah, Karen, I know lots of information to take on board, right? I know it's heaps to absorb. Be sure to check out those YouTube links. Just incredible. Yeah, you definitely do need to ask those questions well. Thanks, Michael. In terms of ChatGPT, getting your questions right is really key. And for those of you that stuck around right now, with ChatGPT, one of the other top tips that I haven't shared is what I often ask ChatGPT to do is to ask me the questions it needs the information for in order to produce its best response. So if I tell it, hey, I'm thinking about writing a blog post about this topic, can you ask me the questions you need answers to in order to produce your best reply? It will then provide you with the questions that it needs answering. So it might say, tell me more about your company, tell me more about the objectives of your company, tell me more about your experience in that particular industry. And by doing that, you're providing it with all the information it needs to then produce a really great first draft of a blog post. That's a really top tip. Yeah, Matt, I think you're right. For now, ChatGPT can't present anywhere near as good as we can. I totally agree. Some of the AI adapted software solutions, platforms, apps that are starting to come out, starting to get me a little bit worried because they're starting to look pretty good. Oh, you're welcome, Amelia. I'm glad that that was digestible. Thank you. Monet, thank you. Yeah, look, I think you're right. I think ultimately it's not going to replace us. There still needs to be that critical thinker. There still needs to be that human touch. It's going to enable us, I think, or empower us to be more confident about the use of the data that we are gathering, right? So in the health and safety space, as technology has improved and we've got all these apps and whiz-bang bits of software, there's more and more data. And that actually makes me a bit nervous because that potentially is exposing us or exposing the business and the officers of the PCBU. Because if we've got the data, if people are reporting stuff, but we may not have seen it, not due to negligence, it's just, we just didn't see it, then that's a concern, and it should be a concern for all of us in our profession. AI will give us confidence that that information is being captured, and at some stage somewhere there will be a red flag raised which will be asking us the question, is this okay? And it's allowing us to then critique that. Cool. You're welcome, Graham. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Michael. Yeah. The success of AI will rely on effective human interaction. Absolutely, Adrian. I believe that wholeheartedly. I think that's absolutely right. You're welcome, Tina. Thanks, Wade. Yeah, Wade, I'm happy to have that 15-minute chat, man. You've got that link. So yeah, feel free to book that call. Jane, yeah, look, personal assistant is a great way to gain insight into the possibilities. I agree. I use a virtual assistant right now. The pair of us are throwing ideas around how we're both using AI to support our functions. It's an epic tool. Peter, my concern is that this will end up dumbing down our plant knowledge and then everything will be automated. Yeah, it's true. It could potentially lead to us dumbing down our knowledge. The other way of looking at it, and this is what kind of freaks me out a little bit, is I suspect when my kids are older, my oldest is 15, my youngest is 3. When they are my age, I'm in my early 40s now, I think they will look back in sheer horror at the idea that airplanes were flown by people and that cars were driven by people. They will be shocked to know that, because they'll be thinking human error versus computer error. Right now, AI isn't quite up to human behaviors. I think I could be proven wrong. However, it's only a matter of time where, actually, even thinking about it now, I think the stats suggest that cars that are on autopilot, the crashes tend to be when it is the human operator that has overridden the computer decision, where it's led to an accident. Anyway, food for thought. Cool. I'm really glad you've really enjoyed this. Mauricio, I had a situation that my client just refused to read an email because the material was generated with AI support. What could we do as professionals to deal with the resistance to AI generated content? Yeah, look, I think in order for us to, as a professional body, right, we have to engage. And if I actually think we need to lead the conversation. And I think it's not just health and safety, right? That would be foolish to say it's just us. I think HR, I think health and safety, I think clearly security information officers, IT officers, executives have a moral responsibility to get their heads around this conversation and to follow the evolution of this, because ultimately AI is here to stay. It is not going anywhere. There's no way, not with the way the uptake of it and the fact that it's just filtering into so much that we're already seeing and doing without even realizing it. We have the ability now to start to have an open conversation about what AI means for the business. Wait until you watch the Copilot presentation by Microsoft, because if you haven't seen it, that, I think, from my perspective, will probably open a few eyes and probably blow a few minds, because once that is launched, just in a matter of time, weeks, months ahead, AI will be in everything we do, whether we like it or not. So definitely watch that space. Okay, team. Okay, cool. Thanks, Monet. Okay, I'm going to let you go. Just mindful of everyone's time. So for those of you that stuck around for the extra Q&A bit, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your kind comments too. I really appreciate that. I'm glad you got some value out of this. This has been really valuable for me too. It's just given me a bit of an opportunity to deep dive into some of this stuff without kind of dropping off the cliff. My top tip, my final thought is AI is big, it's audacious, it's massive, scary, but I think we're going to be okay. Just look through history, right? So we've gone through some pretty massive things, particularly the last few centuries, and it's always come out right. And I think this is just another case of that. It might get a bit weird for a while, but we just stay the course, stick together, keep communicating, remain part of this awesome community that we've got, and keep talking. All right, I'm gonna let you go. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I agree. All right, cool. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much for everyone's time. I'm really glad you got some value out of this, and hope to continue this conversation offline or on the HSP group. All right, see you all soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.